Around the country, this week is recognized as Work Zone Awareness Week. Here in Maine, the DOT, the Turnpike Authority, state police, and others gathered in West Gardner today to put a spotlight on the importance of work zone safety. They say the top 3 contributors to work zone crashes and general highway crashes are distracted driving, speeding, and impairment. Ultimately, they ask when driving into a work zone, be alert and aware of the signs or warnings displayed.
Every cone on the road represents a person. Every sign is a warning. And every reduced speed limit is a direct ask to save lives.
No matter how much we plan, safety is still in the hands of the traveling public. Our goal is to make sure that every person working on the other side of those traffic barriers goes home every night.
Next week, a public hearing is set on a bill that would allow the Maine Turnpike Authority to implement automated speed control systems in highway work zones.